Hi and welcome. This is the first episode of my new show, which I'm going to call Cinema Studies. Just decided I wanted to make my own show just to talk about classic movies and try and break them down in depth. I'm a big lover of film and um, just wanted to start being able to talk about it in my own way. Um, My name is Josh. This episode, I'm joined by one of my best friends, Chris. Hey, how are you doing, Chris?
What's up? Yeah, doing pretty good.
So, I'm really excited about the movie we're talking about today. I'm sure you are too. Um,
Yep.
when we've been friends for a while, but uh, one of the things I remember us talking about early on when we met was Kurosawa. I distinctly remember just talking about his movies, and I feel like that's been kind of something that has, been a part of our friendship and kind of something that we've had, something we relate to. You know, I think we both watched quite a few of his movies. Yeah, he's a huge director, one of the all-time classics film directors who's influenced, tons of people. And I mean, basically everything that came out from the 60s and 70s onwards, somehow influenced by Kurosawa, George Lucas, Coppola, anybody who was big. We're going to talk about Ran, which is one of his later films. Um, one of the ones that neither one of us had seen, and we, watched it. I came over to your house. We watched it on the projector, and it was awesome. Um, Looked beautiful. We got to watch the 4K restoration of it from Studio Canal, and looked absolutely amazing. Um,
Yeah, it was a good projector pick. It's just everything looks so much better, bigger, and brighter, and I
yeah,
mean, on a big wall.
for sure. Yeah, I was glad we watched it on the projector at your house. I mean, the only better way that we could have watched it would be in a movie theater. I mean,
Yeah,
that's the next best thing. So it was a cool first experience with this movie. Um, so we're just gonna kind of go through the major plot points, break it down, kind of talk about what we loved about it, what we thought about the themes and things. But I want to talk about where Kurosawa was at the time because I feel like kind of the way that The Irishman was kind of uh, Martin Scorsese contemplating his mortality and at the end of his, sort of towards the end of his career. This feels very similar. Um, very
yeah,
dark,
definitely.
very dark film, very brutal and um, definitely very contemplative. From the perspective of an older man thinking about all and seeing the what he's reaped or reaping what he's sowed over all of his years and his mistakes and all that stuff. Ran is
Yeah,
definitely, or Ron, I think it's pronounced Ron, is definitely
I think so.
considered his final masterpiece. Yeah, so I mean, Kurosawa was huge all throughout the 50s and the 60s. Rashomon was 1950. That was kind of what catapulted him into the public eye, especially in the West, because that movie was huge. And all throughout the 50s and 60s after that, he came out with one classic after another: Seven Samurai, Yojimbo, High and Low, Hidden Fortress, tons of, I mean, he's got like eight masterpieces, probably. He's
Yeah,
got a ton of movies. But
yeah.
I think it was 65, the last film he did with Mifune was Redbeard. And after that, and after that, he didn't make another movie for like 5 years. And this was towards the end of the 60s was when television in Japan became a lot more popular, and a lot of the cheap like monster movies and stuff became super popular. So he started having a lot of problems trying to get uh, financing for his
Yeah.
films, and it definitely had an effect on him. Anyone who talks about Kurosawa says, anything he was obsessed with making movies. That's all he talked about. He was either quiet or he was talking to somebody about how he was going to be making his next movie. It was his lifeblood. So if he wasn't making a movie, he was not happy.
Yeah.
So uh, he made, I can't remember the name of it. He made another movie in 70, I think, and then right afterwards, it flopped. So he went into like a deep depression, and this is when he tried to commit suicide.
Yeah. And he was a very bad alcoholic too,
Yeah,
along with Mifune. Like they were kind of similar, but I feel like all that spiraled.
yeah. I mean, that was definitely part of it because what Redbeard is the last movie he made with Mifune. They were always fighting. I don't remember what exactly was the straw that broke the camel's back, but he never worked with him again after that. And yeah, he was in a really bad spot after that. He attempted suicide. I think they I read that he slashed his wrist 30 times.
Oh wow.
He was hurting, and he couldn't get money to make a movie. He got financing from Russia. He went out and made a movie called Tresu Uzala in Russia. I think he struggled getting financing from Japan for the rest of his career after that.
Yeah.
Um, right after that, he did Kagamusha, but the only reason that movie was made was George Lucas and Coppola actually helped produce that movie because, like we said, they're hugely influenced by him. And, it was 1980. So they were, at the peak of both of their careers at the time. So
Yeah.
they were trying
Yeah.
to help him. I actually have not seen Kagamusha yet. Have you seen that yet? You haven't, right?
No, I own it, but I have not watched it yet.
Yeah, I really want to watch this, especially after watching Ron, because
Me too.
Kurosawa has said that it was kind of like his rehearsals for Ron, because
Yeah.
he'd only made a few color films. He said that he had said in the past that he didn't want to tackle color until he felt he had mastered it, like he had mastered color theory. So he had just started making films in color, and Kagamusha was kind of seems to be sort of a similar style samurai movie. So after that, it was 5 years later he made Ron, and at this point he had been working on Ron for apparently 10 years.
Yeah. A long
Um,
time.
yeah, he'd been writing the script, rewriting the script over and over. Anyone who knows anything about Ron, it's a loose interpretation of King Lear, but apparently was not originally written
Okay.
as King Lear. It was several drafts in when he sort of saw the archetypes of King Lear and kind of incorporated them into the
Okay.
story. During those 10 years when he was this is one of his most expensive movies, I think. I mean, and you can understand why, because the amount of people in it, the huge sets. So he definitely had trouble getting money for this movie. And while he was, working on trying to raise money for it, he was also a painter, so he was basically storyboarding the entire movie with paints.
That was a big part in the special features. So I think they said the budget they ended up settling on was about 12 or 13 million. The storyboards he created for like almost the entire movie were supposedly these great, elaborate, like high quality, like painting style storyboards.
Yeah.
And I would love to see them because they sound amazing. And definitely after watching the movie, they got to be pretty cool.
Yeah, I watched a little bit on YouTube about a few things about the movie, and they I should saw a few of the storyboards, some of the main ones,
Mhm.
um, and they pretty much follow it to the letter. Because another thing about this movie was Kurosawa was 75 years old at the time, and he was losing his eyesight. Apparently, he was pretty close to blind. I mean, the fact that he worked so hard on those storyboards really like I saw a few side by sides, and the color of the movie is very, it's not really realistic. It's kind of what's the word? It's it's
Exaggerated or
exaggerated. Exaggerated is the word I'm looking for. Yeah, it's definitely exaggerated. It's like a lot of bright primary colors and stuff, and like the way that the Hidetor, what is his name? The main guy's name? Um,
the Lord, whatever his name
Hidetora.
is.
Yeah, the way his face looks and everything is very very exaggerated. I mean,
Yeah,
there's a lot of color in his face, and all the lines and stuff are, they look painted on. I mean,
yeah,
even in the
and
theater in '85, I'm sure you could tell that.
oh yeah. I mean, and it changes throughout the movie too. You know, once he starts to go crazy, he looks crazier. I mean, they definitely exaggerate it as he's spirals down after his son. I don't know how far ahead you want me to go,
No,
uh,
you're fine.
but no, it gets worse as he goes.
Yeah. Yeah, oh, yeah, as he starts to go insane, he definitely, yeah, the shadows around his eyes and everything get really dark. Did you know that
Yeah.
that he was the actor that played him? It's
Um.
Tetsuo Nakodai, the guy that plays like the bad guy in Yojimbo, and he's like the
Okay.
main antagonist in like Harakiri. He's the cop in High and Low.
Okay.
That guy,
Yeah.
which he's a great
Okay.
actor. Like, and of all
Yeah.
the
I didn't
Japanese
even know
movies I've
that.
watched, yeah, dude, I was doing research. I was like, wait, it's that guy? Like, I think he was younger than some of his sons in the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, just because he was they put so much makeup on him.
Yeah. And about the colors, I'm sure that like nobody in real life would coordinate that amount of just colors, and just everything matches, and like everything was just perfect. And in the movie it works surprisingly well because yeah, it's not realistic, but it's so well done that
Yeah.
it just it's amazing to watch.
Yeah, definitely. It and it's not just that it looks good, it's also it kind of helps you keep up with what's happening and who's who.
Yeah.
Like in these big battles, like but those flags tell you exactly which what soldier is what, like who's
Yeah.
fighting who at the time. So it helps you track just visually where you're at and who you're with and everything, which
Yeah.
I thought is it's really smart.
Yeah, there's so much going on at some points in the movie that if it was just all just, gray or whatever, just colored clothes that everybody was wearing, it would just be chaos. Well, which probably would be pretty cool because there is pretty chaotic a lot of the battle scenes, but just
Yeah.
everything flows so well.
Yeah, it's chaotic for sure. It's, it's war, but it's definitely very it's still visually it's easy to follow. Um
Yeah.
it's organized chaos. So what the movie starts with the main character and his sons like on a boar hunt, and then them sitting, I guess they're with another family as well, right? Because they're
Yeah,
talking.
I didn't quite get it. It just seemed like yeah, either another family or just a what's the word I'm looking for? Just an ally of some kind.
Right. That's kind of how I took it as well. But I mean, the big scene at the beginning is him sitting his sons down and having them handing an arrow to each one of them, having them break the arrow, which apparently this is an actual like story in Japanese culture, something that he incorporated into the King Lear story because that's not really part of the Shakespeare story. But having them, he hands each one of them an arrow, has each one of them break an arrow, and say, this, see how easy this is, and then bundles three arrows together and has them each try and break it. The first two sons bend it, but don't really try and break it, and then the third son, the youngest son, breaks it over his knee, and he's like, "This is stupid." Basically, he's like,
Yeah.
"It's like you're you're being a fool." Like, so what do you think about this? Because do you think the youngest son knows that the other two that his brothers are just like greedy, or
Um, yeah, I actually did a little bit of like thinking about that when I was watching and afterwards. I did watch that King Lear Spark Notes YouTube, and it really does borrow a lot from King Lear. I mean, the basic plot points, not a lot of the
yeah,
Japanese culture stuff, obviously, but it was daughters in King Lear instead of sons. But
mm-hmm.
the way they at least explained it in the Spark Notes, what it was basically two kind of bad sons and one good one.
Right,
And the bad sons, like, basically just told him what he wanted to hear. So he would give them the kingdom.
right,
And the one, the technically the good son, was really the only one that told him truth and spoke from the heart.
mm-hmm.
And that kind of dawned on me when it was happening. And afterwards, thinking about it a lot, that was obviously what was kind of going on. I thought
Yeah,
was the two were obviously the bad ones, and the one good one, he basically kind of shafted out of the whole deal.
yeah, yeah. Agreed. Definitely. I wanted to note the something I thought was interesting and something that Kurosawa does in a lot of his movies, which is the way he uses the weather. Because this first scene in the movie, you know, it's like a warm, sunny day, and very quickly as things unravel, the weather starts to change. The sky turns dark, gets
Mhm.
cold. Like when he's after, I mean, so his the main son very quickly shows his true colors and basically kicks his dad out of the castle. So he goes to visit his second son in the other castle, who basically does the same thing. But by the time that this happens, and I'm guessing there's some time in between there, in the you know the seasons have changed, obviously.
Yeah,
Um, so there's been at least a few months in between these things. But by this time, he's going to visit his second son, and it's cold. Like you can see their breath, and it's gotten the skies are darker, and I and you see that throughout the movie as things get worse and worse.
yeah, for sure. One of the other things they talked about in the bonus features, and something I never really thought about, was he actually filmed in whatever. Like, if he wanted it sunny, he would only film in the sun. If he wanted it rainy, he would only film in the rain. So they knew like what scenes they wanted to do, just basically depending on the weather.
Really?
Because all the weather conditions are real. And even I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but even the tsunami, they actually filmed it in a tsunami. Like, all the wind effect and everything, well,
Wow.
wasn't an effect. They really filmed it in a tsunami. I mean, I don't know if they had any kind of extra, you know, help in that department, but
Right.
they really did film it in the weather conditions.
That's incredible. That I
Yeah,
didn't know that. That's pretty
yeah,
amazing because there is a very specific. I mean, yeah. After he leaves the castle, the burning third castle, that wind is insane.
yeah,
I assumed it was like because in like Yojimbo, the end of the movie is really windy and they use giant wind machines for it. So I
right.
assumed it was something like that. But that's really cool. So yeah, let's talk about the big scene because I mean, right after he gets kicked out of second his second son's castle, not they basically make their way over to the third abandoned castle, and that's where I mean one of the biggest war like battle set pieces I've ever seen happens. I mean,
Yeah,
it's crazy. So they get to the castle. They basically find out pretty quickly that it was a setup, and the two sons they send their soldiers attack the castle and kill all of the Lord's men. But yeah, man, this is, I mean, this is one of the coolest scenes, battle scenes I've ever seen. Um, it just looks gorgeous, and I love that they drop the sound out of it. Like you don't hear any sound of the battle for most of it. Like, as soon as things start going bad, like they start attacking, it's just the music, and it's just and you're just watching it visually, seeing all this devastation. These, you're seeing arrows sticking out of people's eyes, and just like just brutal,
It
brutal.
was very, very bloody, bloodier than I would have expected. I mean, there's some blood in Kurosawa movies before, but
Yeah.
uh, I was kind of surprised at the amount of blood that they used in it. Super, super bright red blood.
Yeah, I mean, like I think there's some blood and stuff like Yojimbo and stuff, some like
Mm,
spurty blood, but
yeah,
that's more of a adventure movie than a serious movie too. So I was not expecting it as much here either. But we get a few bloody scenes
yeah,
in this. Um, Yeah, man. I was getting goosebumps when this was happening though, like especially with the sound dropped out, just like the score swelling and everything, just watching everything go down. And Hidatora is just like sitting in it. I guess he's standing up at the top of the tower just watching everything happen. And all the arrows flying, like just whizzing by him, and the flaming arrows when they start burning everything. It's just, it looks so good.
yeah, yeah. That's was probably one of my favorite battles of any movie ever. Just for
Yeah.
the level of detail put in everything, that
Hmm.
there's so many people running around and like I said, arrows flying everywhere, and it's just it was crazy. It really is. I was blown away at how just cool and fun everything was.
Yeah, and also darkly serious, and
Yeah,
there's not like a single joke in the movie. It's very dark, but it's beautiful, and it's, man, I mean, it is really cool. And the rest of the movie is good, but this is definitely like the high point.
yeah,
It finishes out its story, and it's still very, very good and very interesting, but this is the big spectacle
yeah,
moment of the movie. And that final shot of like what he tries to commit harakiri or seppuku, but can't find a sword. He broke his sword earlier.
yeah,
Miraculously, he's the only one who lives, and
yeah,
everyone's just so shocked that they just let him go. They just part and just let him walk out. And that shot as he's walking through the gate with that burning castle and the rows of soldiers behind him, and that look on his face. He's dragging the sheath of his sword behind him,
yeah,
and he's just shocked and like already lost his mind basically.
yeah,
That's one of the best shots in film history.
yeah. I think everybody's who's into film has seen that
Yeah.
him exiting the castle
Yeah.
scene, or at least a shot from it. Um,
Yeah, I've
that's
definitely seen that shot before,
yeah,
but watching it in context, it's even better. It's like,
it is.
so after that, they pick him up, they go and they end up going to this hut where they find the blind man that I guess he was from another family that they had conquered. I feel like this is kind of where, because up until now, I mean, you definitely feel sorry for the Lord Hidatoro. I mean,
Yeah,
you feel like all this, the skies have just rained down on him. But this is where you start to get the hint that maybe he wasn't such a good guy himself, and maybe he's starting, like I said earlier, to reap what he sowed in his earlier years. So help me remember, because I couldn't write notes for everything, but what are
yeah.
some of the other good moments going forward for you?
I mean, almost every like sunset shot that they had was like a literal painting.
Yeah.
It did it quite a few times, but it was kind of the same every time. But still, every time they did it, it was just beautiful. I mean, everything about this movie is beautiful. So
Yeah.
it's kind of really hard to pick. I mean, aside from the main battle scene and him exiting the castle,
Yeah.
it's really hard to pick like out spots of it because almost everything, the wide shots of all the soldiers like coming up over the hill in the later battle scene, that everything was just so far out and
Yeah.
at the same time so choreographed that the army's coming in from this side and you get the two armies on the other side, and it's it's crazy. Like I wouldn't have expected something of that level.
Yeah, that magnitude. It's just it's enormous. I really like going forward. Some of my favorite parts of the story were with the widowed wife. I thought that was pretty fascinating because you find out that she was kind of pulling the strings the whole time,
Yeah.
and which is very Shakespearean, very Macbeth-ish too. Um, but you find out that basically she was also from one of the from that other family that was conquered by Lord Hidetoro, and all she wants is revenge. So
Yeah.
she's basically playing both of these greedy sons just to create chaos, just to watch the world burn, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. She wants to just destroy the family.
Yeah, I mean she's a Black Widow, basically. She's
Yeah.
just just creeps her way in there and whispering in these guys' ears, basically molding molding them to her will to create chaos. And I mean, seeing how after her husband dies and she seduces the second son, and all the stuff with her wanting his wife dead, the stuff with getting her head and all that stuff, I loved all that.
Yeah.
The like the head,
The
uh
fox head.
the fox head was great. Like that head soldier, I loved that he did that.
Yeah.
Because he told the guy, he was like, I'm not doing this. This is stupid, basically.
Yeah.
And bringing her the fox head was fantastic. And then he gets his revenge on her at the end, running up there
Yep.
and just slashing her head. I mean, that's the other big bloody
Yeah.
moment. I was not expecting that.
Yeah. You don't really see it. I mean, like, yeah, you don't see anything but the blood splatter behind them.
Yeah, he
And
walks up to her, but
yeah.
I mean, another body is like blocking it, but you see the slash and then all the blood splatter against the wall. It's
Yeah.
awesome. When you find out that she wants revenge, I kind of, uh, I didn't hate her as much as anymore. I was like, oh, I kind of like see where you're coming from, but you're still like, yeah, it's still kind of sweet to see
Yeah.
him slash her head off at the end. She definitely deserved it at that point. I mean, she'd
Yeah.
killed so many people.
Yeah. She had her own motivations. And I noticed that's a thing Kurosawa uses a lot is, you know, even the good characters have done bad things and the bad characters do good things. I mean, it's a little bit more ambiguous than just straight up, you know, good versus bad.
Yeah.
Um, there's always like some kind of morality that the characters are trying to play at. And it's never just cut and dry.
Yeah, I love that about all his movies. I mean, even even like the more fun ones, the like Hidden Fortress or Yojimbo or something, they're all kind of gray characters. Like they have
Yeah.
good and bad in them. Um, they're not just stereotypes. They're all fleshed out characters in some way.
Yeah.
You see the faults and the strengths in them, which I mean makes him so great. I mean, I've only really started watching his movies a lot. I mean, we've watched a few this year, partly
Yeah.
because of pandemic. There hasn't been a whole lot coming out, so might as well jump into some old
Yeah.
classics and stuff. Um, but I'd only really seen a couple of his movies before that, I'd seen Rashomon and Yojimbo and stuff, but the more I watch his stuff, like the higher he gets on my list. I mean, it's easy to see why he's so such an important filmmaker and and so revered because his movies are great. Like they stand up today. I mean,
Oh yeah,
most of these movies are. I mean, Rashomon is what 70 years old now. Movie's
yeah,
still good. Came out in
yeah,
1950. Yeah, it's a 70-year-old movie. This movie's still great. I mean, that's
yeah,
and it's just crazy to see how well they still stand up today.
yeah. Definitely need to watch more. I haven't seen that many more. Yeah, I've seen Seven Samurai, of course,
Mm-hmm.
and I saw Rashomon in the theater probably about well, it was before the pandemic, of course, but probably about 2 years ago now, I guess. Alamo Drafthouse did the film club,
Mm-hmm.
and that was the second Kurosawa movie I'd seen was Rashomon.
That's
And
cool. That's the first one that I watched,
okay,
and I don't know if that's a good place to start, but I thought it was really good. Um,
yeah, yeah, just good as any, I think.
yeah, I think I watched that, and then I watched Yojimbo. Those were the first two I watched because I've always been a westerns guy, so I'd heard about Yojimbo, because I
Yeah.
love Sergio Leone and Fistful of Dollars and all that stuff. So that was one I definitely wanted to watch. Where do you think that this one ranks in the films that you've watched?
I mean, I've only seen it once.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen Seven Samurai a couple of times, and I mean, the posters behind me.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably in my top five favorite movies. I think Ron is pretty much right behind it. I mean,
Yeah.
it was amazing. It really was. I mean, I'm definitely gonna watch it again and again and again. It's
Yeah.
it's amazing. I mean, their movies are so long, but they just don't feel like it. Like they go by so quick. Everything is interesting about them. The
Mm-hmm.
dialogue is interesting. It's not like Tarantino level kind of craziness, to the dialogue, but just everything about these movies are so interesting.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like, we watched it a couple of days ago, and I've been thinking about it ever since. And when we were watching it, we took a short break in the middle, but when we picked it back up, I mean, I was immediately sucked back in, and I think we were both surprised at when it ended. We're like, oh, I could
Yeah.
have watched this for another
Yeah.
45 minutes, probably.
Yeah. Yeah. I could have just kept going. I was a little
Yeah,
bummed out. I mean, not that it was like bad or anything. Just I wanted more. And that's good. That's a good thing.
yeah, yeah. I've been thinking about it for the past 2 days, and definitely one that I want to go back and revisit. What do you think about that final scene of the Lord dies with his son, and that's also King Lear. He dies with his daughter, the
Yeah.
good daughter, and then we see the blind man up on the hill or up on the ruined castle with his painting of the Buddha, and then he almost falls off the cliff and drops the Buddha. How do you feel about that ending?
I don't, I don't really, at the very end, I'm not 100% sure. But I mean, I was super bummed out whenever the son gets shot because it's very quick and unexpected.
Mm-hmm.
They're
Just
in
like a
this
random
kind of
gunshot.
yeah, they're in like the that's not necessarily a battle, I guess, but I don't know, they're doing whatever they're doing, and the son picks up his father, and they're riding on a horse, and then just all of a sudden, boom, gunshot, and it's just like, oh no,
Mm-hmm.
you know exactly what happens, and
Oh, you see him
yeah,
slump
it's
over
kind
immediately
of hard.
before his dad
Yeah,
even realizes it. You see him. Yeah, it's
it's
heartbreaking.
kind of heartbreaking. But the very end, like that's one that's kind of bugged me since I watched it. I'm not 100% sure. how to interpret that.
Okay. I was just curious because I'm not exactly sure either. And I think that's the point. I think he wants you to think
Yeah,
about that last shot. That's one of the
yeah,
reasons it's like, man, that's the way it ended. Like, I wanted more because it's like, it leaves you sort of unsatisfied. And that's absolutely purposeful. I mean, I kind of feel like it's God's abandonment. God abandoned them, or he was never there at all. And either way,
yeah.
it's kind of
And I
super
think,
dark.
that's like, I guess where Kurosawa was at this point in his career was
Yeah.
just, you know, contemplating his legacy, or his family life, or whatever it may
Right.
be. He's just, and it's kind of dark when you correlate it with that too, because I mean, if that's how he was feeling, that's
Yeah.
pretty dark.
Yeah, and I mean that's a good point. Because that's kind of why I went through all that preamble. I wanted to kind of talk about like where he was at the time because he was in a very dark place,
Yeah,
he had a lot of problems and struggles, and um, he was in a very dark time, and it's the mid 80s. It's post Hiroshima. So I had heard that he was also thinking about, you know, nuclear war and, just the total devastation of your country and things like that, which I think you can definitely kind of see hints of that in the film as well. Yeah, I mean, this is a great movie. I definitely put it up near the top as well. I don't think anything can beat Seven Samurai, just because
yeah,
the characters are so great in that movie. It's such a good story. I mean, it's tragic, but it's also a lot of fun. It's got the adventure elements and the tragedy and the incredible battles and all of that. But yeah, so it's hard to beat that. But
yeah,
this is definitely right there. High and Low is definitely really close as well for me. I think that one's really, really, really good. Um, but yeah, this one's right at the top. It's a great movie. Really glad that we got to watch it, and definitely something I'm going to watch again. And I don't know if I should have picked a 3 hour samurai epic as my first episode, but it was fun. It was
yeah,
and I mean, definitely gives us a lot to talk about. I feel like we covered a lot of stuff. Do you
yeah.
have any
We
final?
definitely, no, we definitely could probably keep going on and on about it. I mean, I think we kept the plot pretty simple and going over it, but
Yeah,
I mean, if we went through plot point by plot point, I mean, we'd be here for 3
3 hours.
hours because we'd be
Yeah.
talking about every little scene and every point in the movie. So,
Yeah, and I told you before we started that you if you saw my notes, you'd think I was a madman. But I mean, almost every scene is worth mentioning. Like,
yeah,
it's everything's so interesting and so beautiful. It's like, yeah, I mean, it would be worth doing 3 hours. I'm not going to do that, but I mean, almost everything in the film is worth bringing up. But I think we hit everything pretty well. Um, Talked about most of all the best parts for sure.
yeah,
Um, yeah, I mean, I think that's a good place to stop. Um,
yeah.
Thanks,
I don't
Chris.
think I have anything else. Yeah, no problem.
Thanks for doing this. I really appreciate it. I I think it was a good first episode because I mean it's something that we both love and something that's easy to dig into. Um,
For us, yeah, for us, for sure. Um,
yeah,
I don't think Randy could have sat still for three
yeah,
hours during this without doing something, or
yeah. It would have
yeah,
been
I mean,
hard to go through all of that with Randall. He would have had too much OCD.
yeah, yeah. And if he's watching this, love you,
Yeah,
but still, yeah. And I think he would happily admit that, yeah, this is not one he would want to sit down and go through point by
probably.
point.
Probably not. Probably not. Yeah, I think that's it. Had a lot of fun. We'll end it here. Thanks everybody for watching. Um, this is my first video. It's a little bit rocky, but it'll get better every episode. If you love movies, I'm just gonna try and pick classic movies, maybe stuff a little bit off the beaten path, not like super big classics and stuff, but interesting movies by good filmmakers and um, things that we can dig into and talk about. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, please subscribe, give me a like on the video, give me some comments, let me know if we got anything wrong or if you have anything to add to the discussion. um, yeah, I love talking movies. It's my obsession. I've been obsessed with movies since I was a little kid. It's all I've ever wanted to do. um, so yeah, I'd love to talk with anybody who's interested. Until then, uh, we'll see you.